I think certain porn stars are oftentimes labeled various races or ethnicities that they might not be,
Yes.
just to play a role because there's a fetish. Did you have any odd experiences with that in your career, or what was it like navigating race in what you saw within the industry?
So, there's so much. I mean, you could spend like the whole episode talking about race and porn. So, I guess from my end, people tried to like market me as like Latina for a long time to sell, and then I would like threaten to not shoot with the company again if they did that, because I'm like, no, I'm just not Latina. Like, why would you do that? Like, they're gonna piss off the actual Latinas that you should just be hiring for this role if that's what you want to do, and it's not accurate. So that's happened a bunch of times with me. And then when it comes to like specifically like Black men, white girl porn, like what they call like interracial. And I would always joke, I was like, every scene I do is interracial because I'm like Japanese and like Spanish and all these things. So like, it's just stupid that we market it that way. I stayed away from just any kinds of those shoots for a long time, particularly because the companies that were shooting them would market them in such a disgusting way. They would have the dudes show up in like really like awful clothes, like baggy jeans and chains, and like have them like cussing at the girl, saying really derogatory racial slurs to her. She would be returning them. And I was like, I want no part of this. Like, this is so ugly to me. A lot of people didn't see the issue. They're like, it's just entertainment. I was like, I just don't. I think that there's entertainment and there's also stuff that maybe you should say shouldn't be on the internet. And that's like something that I think shouldn't be on the internet. So when Blacked came out, I felt like they were doing stuff that was like, obviously it was still catering to people that wanted to see white girl, black guy, but there was no racial slurs. There wasn't like the hyper focus on race, even though it's called Black. Like, it was just a scene, right? It was just a really beautifully shot scene. So once that came out, I was like, okay, I can do this before I leave. But until then, there were no companies doing it in what I would consider a respectable fashion. So I just wish like more people, if they were uncomfortable, just say no, like, I don't need this paycheck, or we're going to shoot the scene and we're going to shoot it without these words being said, because it's just not okay.
Yeah, it seems like something in Hollywood too, where, right, for the longest time, there might be just one role that an Indian person can get. There might be one role that, right, the Mexican immigrant can play, right? It's the janitor, or right. There's all these stereotypes, and that's really limiting. And I think, like you mentioned, it's difficult for folks who are trying to come up, because that might be the only way that they can get a paycheck, and so maybe the industry benefits off of that. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, because it's something that I've noticed, and kind of like you mentioned before, it could be a way that we can critique porn, and I think we should, but it's not that that's separate from society in the same way that, right, Hollywood or hip hop, right, we can't just critique those as though they're not reflective of our larger society.
Totally. And you also have to look at the consumers, right? Like, it's not being filmed because no one's watching it. You know what I mean? Like, they're not shooting these types of scenes because no one's watching it. So I think there's like a bigger issue, and then porn is just kind of like catering to that demographic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then with the news, I wonder, I mean, we're consuming Trump, and we're consuming that divisiveness. So in the same way, we're all,
I just feel like people, so when it comes to like that divisiveness, right? Like, does it matter? I have to like word this carefully. So for example, there was somewhat recently, there was like this 5-year-old boy that got shot by his neighbor. I don't know like the exact details. I think like he might have been on some substance. I'm not sure, but they had made sure that they put the race in there, right? Like, it was a black man that shot a white kid. And to me, like, that doesn't matter. It could have been a white man that shot this kid. It could have been an Asian man. Like, I just don't know why we're saying like the race, right? It's awful. A child just got murdered, and like, that is what it is. But we sensationalize it because we have to say, oh, it's a black man that did it. And because we have to now like create this idea that black men are dangerous, right? Because now they're trying to counter the other argument, which is, you know, Black men are victims, which is another narrative that people are pushing. And it's like, no, we're all individuals and we all have individual responsibility, and there's good people and there's bad people. And I just don't like that we keep on like putting everyone in a bucket, right? Like no one chooses what color they're in. So why are you just saying like we're all this or we're all that and like hyper focusing on it? I think if we were to just stop focusing so much on this thing that nobody can change, right? Like I can't go change my race. Like we can start solving some issues. I know it seems like there's no simple answer, right? But like we could start by stopping the sensationalization of race.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the general sentiments of problematizing the descriptors in terms of, man, woman, Black, Latino, Japanese. And I think for me, and I was interested in, because I identified you as a white woman. And so the fact that you're multiracial, I identify as multiracial as well, interests me, is the systemic racism, the institutionalized racism, the fact, it happens in porn, it happens in schooling, just the disparity with policies that create change. It's redlining, it's the history, right? It's the fact that Black people don't have, and Indigenous people in particular, the resources, because, and I say that as someone whose mother came here as an immigrant, so I don't have wealth from her grandparents that is passed on, but my dad's white, and I do experience that privilege of that generational wealth. And I think that's something that we don't talk about, that it's that race and the economics of it all are so intertwined because of the inequities that have existed over quite a long period of time.
So I think, and again, like I know I'm not like the most educated person in this field by any means. I'm always open to like more information. I see how their systemic racism existed. I see that when there were redlining laws. I see that when there were Jim Crow laws. I see that with even like certain crime reform bills, right? Like that were clearly targeted for certain demographics of people. 100%.
You're like, we're good now though. Like that was the past.
I think we were headed to a really great place. I truly think we were, like up until like a few years ago, maybe. I think like I didn't know a single person that would look at someone and the first thing that they saw was their skin. I didn't see anyone who, if they were making certain choices, like couldn't be where they wanted to be, financially. And I get everyone has different starting points, and it's tough because like obviously like how do you tackle something as awful as slavery when it actually it wasn't that long ago, right? Like everyone wants to pretend like it was forever ago. I mean, it really wasn't. Like the repercussions of that still are obviously hitting certain communities, but I would argue that there are other more important pressing things to look at than something that we're calling systemic racism, because it's like if you say, okay, let's say I'm going to entertain like that's still a very big issue, and that's like a reason why this community is hurting so bad. Like, can you like name those policies, and then how do we fix it? For me, I would say let's look at things like the Welfare Act, right? That like kind of incentivize single moms. Let's look at the crime reform bill that put so many dads in jail, and now you're leaving these moms to raise these kids on their own. Of course, any single mom is going to have like a shittier time raising that kid regardless of your color, right? So I think there's like so many other things that we can focus on, try and fix, that like I guess are more apparent than this thing that no one can really describe. And I'm not saying, again, like I'm always open to more information, but for me, like that's kind of what I see.
Thanks for watching this short clip. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. To listen to the full episode, visit soulforceones.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Peace.